Salwete, y'all. It's Magister Hodges coming in super late in week 4. I'm not even going to try and give an excuse. I'm just slow. So this is going to be week 4. I'll show you guys about what our vocabulary review will be. And then we'll talk about a little bit about adjectives and adverbs, and I'll make another video where we review prepositions. This, thankfully, is a lot simpler than the verbs that we've been going over the last couple weeks. But you guys have been working hard at it, and you know, you guys have done great for those of you that have been trying. So just keep on keeping on. All right, so vocab review. I've put this in It's Learning. A lot of people have already done it. We're starting with a brand new textbook that differs from the one I've been using in the past. And if you've been in the county, it's different for you too. It's called Latin for the New Millennium. And when we're done with this review here, it's going to throw us right into like chapter 13 or something. And it's going to assume that you know all this vocab. So to get y'all caught up each week, I'm going to give you guys 3 or 4 lists of vocabulary. They're not very long. You're looking at like 45-ish words. A lot of them you may already know or recognize. Some of them may be new. You'll go on Quizlet and review and complete the learn mode to 100% on each set. When you're done, message me on It's Learning so I can go check. So there's that. If you have questions about that, send me a message. Let's talk about adjectives and adverbs. So for the review of 3rd grade English, adjectives are words that describe nouns. In English, we just put them right before the noun that we're describing. We're good to go. Johnny's got a big red truck. Big red, those describe truck. Makes sense to us. We're one of the few languages that do that. Latin typically puts the adjective after the noun it's describing. So if English did that, it'd be like, Johnny's got a truck, big red. Sounds like he named the truck. But that's just how they do it. Now, typically they come after the noun they're describing, except when the adjective is describing the size or the quantity of something. So if I want to say Johnny has a big red truck in Latin, I'd say Johnny magnum carum rubrum habet. Magnum meaning big, red meaning rubrum. Since big is describing the size, it'll come before the word for truck, which I'm using carum here, which is kind of like a chariot. And rubrum meaning red just comes after it. I just explained that just so you're aware. It looks kind of weird when you see it, but that's how it works. If you're writing Latin, you can put them wherever you want. I don't really care. Okay, so reviewing our nouns a little bit. Every noun has 3 aspects to it: case, number, and gender. And so when a adjective is describing a noun in Latin, it has to match the case, number, and gender of the noun it's describing. I'm going to show you guys how that works, because depending on the type of adjective, it works a little differently. Once again, this isn't too complicated. So just as a review, case is the name of the form of the noun that describes its role in the sentence. Our biggest examples are nominative and accusative. You'll have a nominative noun when it's the subject. It'll have a nominative ending. Accusative means it's the direct object receiving the action. It'll have an accusative ending. Number just refers to whether it's singular or plural. And gender is the gender of the noun, whether it's masculine, feminine, or neuter, which is symbolized in the vocabulary by an M, an F, or an N after the noun. So let's look at some examples. There are 2 types of adjectives. The first type are what we call first/second declension adjectives. They look like this: litus, lita, litum. You'll be given 3 versions of it. And always this, when it's given to you in a vocab list or a dictionary, it'll go in this order: masculine, feminine, neuter. I say first/second because it will change the declension that its endings will follow to match their nouns depending on the gender. So the masculine one you can see is litus. You see it ends with us. That's a second declension nominative ending. So when it's masculine, the adjective will follow the second declension masculine endings: us, e, o, e, orum, is, os, is. When the second one, lita, is feminine, you notice the a here, typically first declension. So when when the noun it's describing is feminine, it will look like lita, and it'll follow the first declension endings: a, I, arum, is, us, is. And when it's neuter, you'll notice the um here. That's the neuter second declension ending. So it'll follow the neuter second declension endings, which are slightly different from the masculine. I, o, a, orum, is, a, is. And so that's what that's all about. It can flip-flop between first and second declension depending on its gender. Okay, now let's talk about third declension adjectives. This is the other group. So you have the first group that can flip-flop between the first and second depending on the gender. Third declension stays third declension no matter what gender it is. And one thing that makes it a little complicated is that there are multiple types of third declension adjectives, basically depending on what they look like when they're masculine, feminine, or neuter. The three types are called 1, 2, and 3 termination adjectives. Termination meaning that it just has 3 different endings. 2 termination meaning that it has 2 different endings. 1 termination meaning that it has one ending for gender. So a 3 termination third declension adjective like colere, coleris, colere will go in the same order as you're given with first and second. You'll give the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. Now the masculine and the feminine will just follow the third declension masculine feminine endings. Bla, is, e, es, or es, ibus, es, ibus. Third declension, or the neuter form will follow third declension neuter endings. Bla, is, e, bla, a, ibus, a, ibus. If it's a 2 termination, if it's a 2 termination one, then this first example right here can be both masculine and feminine. Omne is going to be the neuter form. And once again, omnes will just follow the normal third declension masculine feminine endings that I just went over up here. Omne will follow the neuter version of those endings that I went through up here. And then we have 1 termination ending, and that just means that the nominative is always atrox for this example in its nominative form. And just to go back, the forms that you're given whenever you're given an adjective are all the nominative. Okay. Third declension, you'll sometimes see comma, gen, and then the genitive form. That's just so you know how to form the stem. But yeah, so that means that no matter what gender it is, if it's 1 termination, that the nominative will be atrox. And then if it's neuter, it'll follow those neuter endings. And if it's masculine, it'll follow the masculine ending, so on and so forth. But they'll always stay in the third declension. Okay. So let's look at some examples. This one's pretty simple because the declensions just happen to match. Canis ferox, nominative, the fierce dog. Canis ferocis, genitive, of the fierce dog. Cani feroci, dative, to or for the fierce dog. Canem ferocum, accusative. The fierce dog is a direct object. Cane feroci, with the fierce dog. One weird thing is that third declension adjective, and these are all third declensions, so third declension noun with a third declension adjective. Third declension adjectives, when they're ablative, for whatever reason, end with an I instead of an E. It's not really a big deal. I'm just pointing it out. Let's look at a first declension example over here. Puella laita. So puella is feminine, so we're going to go with the feminine version right here. The happy girl. Puella laitai, of the happy girl, so on and so forth. You can see the rest of these. Now, when I said that they have to match in case, number, and gender, like I said down here, notice how that doesn't include declension. It's because the declension doesn't have to match. They can be different declensions. And, because nouns don't typically change their declensions ever, and adjectives don't really change their declension unless they're first, second, they flop between those. But you'll never see a first, second declension adjective become third randomly just to match its noun. So let's look at what that looks like. So if I want to say the happy dog, I'll say canis laetus. These are both the nominative ending of the word. Canis laeta is the happy girl dog, right? So nominative, just the gender changes, because canis can be both masculine or feminine depending on what the gender of the dog is. If I wanted to make it plural, I'd say canes laeti, the happy boy dogs. I'm using the masculine form of laetus here with the nominative plural, and that follows the second declension because we're talking about boy dogs. And if I'm talking about boy dogs as a direct object, I'll say canes laetos. Once again, following the second declension, because laetus, laeta, laetum is a first, second declension adjective, and it'll follow the second declension masculine. if the noun is masculine, which in this case it is. Let's look over here at mashing up we're weary, which is second declension, because the genitive ends with an I, and atrox, that word from the last page, that the single termination adjective, third declension adjective that means atrocious. So we're atrox, the atrocious man. Weary atrokes, the atrocious men. So notice here I've made we're into man into men by making it plural here. It's nominative plural masculine, so I need this to be nominative plural masculine. Atrokes. Wero atroki. This is the dative. This is the dative masculine singular version. So I give the dative masculine version of atroki, the third declension ending, to or for the atrocious man. And then you see the example down here, to or for the atrocious men. Wearies, that's the dative plural masculine ending. Atrokibus, the dative plural masculine ending from the third declension. So they match in case, number, and gender, whether it's nominative, accusative, singular, plural, masculine, feminine, or neuter, but they do not have to match in declension. Okay. So let's talk about degrees. So positive, comparative, and superlative degrees. If you were in my class last year, we talked a lot about the positive. We talked a lot about the superlative. The comparative is just kind of in the middle here. The degree is like, imagine taking an adjective and having a volume knob on it. Positive is the lowest volume. Comparative is the second highest volume. Superlative is the highest volume. So let's start with the positive. The positive is just the base form of the adjective that you're given in vocabulary. Some examples here are iratus, irata, iratum, which mean angry. Ferox, meaning fierce, and pulcher, pulchra, pulchrum, meaning beautiful. Now, iratus, irata, iratum, and pulcher, pulchra, pulchrum are both first, second declension adjectives, whereas ferox is a third declension adjective. But you'll see it doesn't really matter what the declension is down here. When they become comparative means you want to say like blanker or more blank or rather blank. You'll do that by just slapping IOR on the end. So notice how iratus, angry, turns into iratior, angrier. I'm just giving the genitive version over here so you can see that it's third declension. So it becomes a third declension adjective when you do that. Ferocior, rather fierce. Pulchrior, more beautiful. You see how you just slap IOR on the end and then it becomes comparative. You're saying blanker or rather blank. Then we got the superlative. This is one we talked about a lot, and this is the one that's probably the most noticeable because you'll see, and superlative means you're saying like it's the most blank, or it's very blank, or it's the blankest of something. And you form it by adding isimus, isima, or isimum on the end. You turn it into a first/second declension adjective, no matter what it is. So iratissimus, iratissima, iratissimum would mean very angry. Ferocissimus, ferocissima, ferocissimum means the fiercest. And down here, I have an example of a slightly irregular one. We see pulcher turns into pulchrior, pulchrior turns into pulcherimus, and that has the double R, IMUS ending, and it's just something they do. I just want to point it out. There are a couple of irregular ones, but most examples will follow these top two columns right here, and that's degrees. So let's talk about adverbs. Adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. In English, we do this by just putting ly on it. We take the word quiet, it's an adjective, the quiet boy, and we want to make it an adverb. We'll say the boy quietly walks, right? We just put ly on the end. Latin, fortunately, has a similarly simple way of doing this. Take these examples here: tacitus, lentus, intentus. This is quiet, slow, and careful. You remove the ending, us, a, or and you just replace it with an e. And that's tacite, lente, intente, quietly, slowly, carefully. That's if it's a first, second declension adjective. You notice how it has the us, a, That's how you know it's first or second declension. Let's look what happens if we look at a third declension adjective. Ferox, fierce, colère, quick, brevis, short. Let's make them into adverbs. Ferox turns into ferociter. Colère turns into colériter, quickly. Brevis, for short, turns into breviter, shortly. So you see here, when it's a first, second declension adjective, it'll just have an e at the end. That makes it an adverb. And when it's a third declension adjective, you change the ending out with iter. And that's how you do it. That's how simple it is. So there it is, just kind of reiterated. Fortunately, adverbs don't change their endings according to declension or anything like that. So yay! And that's it. We'll talk about the prepositional phrases in another video. So, voilete.